Hello, celestial beings. Today we're going to be doing a deeper dive into Uranus moving into Gemini on July 7th, 2025. And humble apologies. This was actually supposed to be posted almost 2 weeks ago. But I'm on a trip in Bali, and YouTube thought that I was someone trying to hack into my account. So I had to wait to get it all sorted out. I was super frustrated at the time and completely unnerved. But then the Great Mother prompted me to remember the tarot pull I did to help us ground our nervous system during this time of Uranus and Gemini, which I'll share at the end of this video. And I can attest that it really helped me to ground and accept the situation and move on with what I could do and accept what was completely out of my control. So I hope that you will also find this tarot spread very helpful during this time. So Uranus moved into Gemini on July 7th, and it will be there for about 4 months until it retrogrades back into Taurus, which it just left on November 7th, 2025. And then it will reemerge fully into Gemini on April 25th, 2026. And Uranus moves in about a 7-year cycle, so it will be there for about 6 years after that. And hi, I'm Mel, your pocket mystic, and I'm on a journey to make mysticism more accessible for your everyday life. So today I'm going to be going over what Uranus moving into Gemini means, what Uranus rules, and the energy of the sign of Gemini. Then I will share a tarot spread to help us ground our nervous systems during this time. Now, before we go into Uranus and Gemini and what it means and what has happened the last few times it's been there, I just wanted to remind everyone that the goal of anything that I share here is never for you to feel afraid or anxious or worried. Because, spoiler alert, the last 3 times we've seen Uranus and Gemini, it has preceded or impacted the course of a major war. And it's natural to hear the word war, or even just look around at the news and what's going on and feel afraid. I completely understand that. But I am hoping that the information that I share can help you to feel prepared to understand the energy that is impacting the world and to give you the tools that help you navigate these times. I was reflecting the other day about, I don't know if you remember, there were all those memes maybe a few years ago going around about like, gosh, wouldn't it be nice to live in some unprecedented times, LOL. And I definitely laughed at and agreed with all of those memes. But I was thinking about it more recently, and I don't know if it's because of social media and the 24-hour fear-mongering news cycle that we think that we're the only humans in history to live in unprecedented times. But the reality is, each human incarnation feels like what they are seeing and experiencing in their time is unprecedented because, frankly, it is. Because the only constant on this planet is change. And I know people say death and taxes, but with the changes that are happening in technology, you're hearing so much about singularity and the possibility of a universal income. I mean, who knows? Regardless, I'm not here to be Nostradamus, and I'm not here to predict the future. I do remain hopeful that the changes in our technology and connection mean that perhaps we don't need physical wars to bring about the revolution that Uranus does seek to bring us. I like to believe that this movement into Gemini will ultimately bring more freedom, more connection, and more peace from our current situation, and a deeper understanding that we are all connected on this one planet. But frankly, I'm always hoping for that. So sorry for the long disclaimer, but I just wanted to set the stage that I do not want what I'm going to share to induce fear. I only want to provide you with understanding and tools to support you with the changes in this energy that Uranus moving in Gemini is going to bring. So starting with the basic players, Uranus is the planet of innovation, rebellion, and major upheavals. It's an outer planet, so its impact is felt on a much broader scale in the collective, in societies, government, nations, and so on, versus it just feeling very personal, like, let's say, Venus. Uranus comes in to shake up the status quo. It moves in 7-year cycles, meaning you see it in a sign once in every about 80 years or so. So most of us have never experienced Uranus in Gemini. But if you have, please share your well-earned wisdom and insights in the comment section. Now, Uranus has been in Taurus for the past 7 years. And Taurus is not necessarily a planet that Uranus loves because Uranus is steady, grounded, slow moving, maybe even stubborn. And Uranus is a planet that likes to change things up. And it's going to get its chance as it moves into Gemini. Gemini is a mutable air sign. It's ruled by the planet Mercury, which is a fast-moving planet that oversees communication and intellect. Gemini loves witty banter and is easily bored. This is why Geminis are often known for their chatty nature and love of intellectual stimulation. Sure, they can be seen as flighty, hello, air sign, or inconsistent and unreliable, but it's just that they're constantly chasing that lightning in a bottle, and they have the adaptability and resilience and intelligence to make it happen. So Uranus, disruptor, innovator, master of upheaval, is entering the fast-paced, communicative, intellectual sign of Gemini. So it will actually be like lightning in a bottle, except that the impacts will be felt all around the globe. Now, since Uranus is a slower moving planet, you might not necessarily sense these shifts right away. But then again, since it's an airy Gemini, chances are things will heat up quickly, certainly more quickly than they did in Taurus. And since Gemini is Miss Social and Miss Intellect, the changes are likely to come through in ways that we communicate and share information, i.e. technology, and how we interact with each other. This is further influenced by Pluto having moved into Aquarius earlier this year. Pluto is a planet that moves in 30-year cycle. It's the furthest out planet, and some people say it's not even a planet, but we're not going to get into that. And it also just left an earth sign, Capricorn, and is now in the air sign of Aquarius. But that's a topic for another time. Let's just say major technological governing and spiritual shifts will happen with that change. And then now we have Uranus and Gemini to help speed that up. So first, we're going to go into the broader understanding of what this time might mean based on what it has meant. And then we also want to get into a more individual understanding of what it might mean because, as I said, Uranus is also known as the planet of the nervous system. And then, of course, we'll go into our tarot spread. So remember, Uranus's goal of innovation and change and upheaval is for greater freedom and enlightenment. That is the goal of what Uranus is doing. It's coming into an existing status quo and saying, wait, things could be better here. And it's using whatever sign it's in to help it do that. So now let's start with the broad impacts to give you more understanding of what to expect during this time. So I'm only going to go through the past 3 times that Gemini was in Uranus. And as I said, it has generally coincided with times of war. So the last time we saw Uranus enter Gemini was in 1942. Of course, World War II was already well underway at that point, which is another reason why I'm saying we can't just assume that Uranus going into Gemini equals war. Unless, again, you are a seer, then please feel free to share what you know in the comments below. But an important thing to note about this was that Uranus retrograded back into Taurus, and then it fully settled into Gemini in 1944, May 31st, 1944. And then a week later, we had D-Day, which, as you guys know, was ultimately a day about freedom for people that were being oppressed. And there were many other things that happened during Uranus run in Gemini, which is another thing that we're going to talk about. So yes, each of the last 3 times we've seen Uranus and Gemini, there has been a war, but there have been major innovations in the ways that we communicate and also transportation, so the ways that we connect with the world. So back to the last time we saw Uranus and Gemini, we saw that the GI Bill granted education to veterans. Again, we're talking about intellect here. So mass amounts of people were able to get free education. We saw the rise of television during this time and improvements in telecommunication. And then the time before that was from 1859 to 1966. So the Civil War in America started in April 1861. Also during this time, we saw the rise of railroads, telegraph use, and motorcycles. So again, you're seeing a war that was ultimately about bringing broader freedom to people who are being oppressed, and then also improving and innovating on the ways that we communicate, connect, and move about the world. And then before that, we had Uranus move into Gemini on April 1775, which coincided with the start of the American Revolutionary War, which once again was about people who were being oppressed, finding more freedom. Similarly, it coincided with the First Anglo-Maratha War. Same thing, people being oppressed, finding more freedom. And then back in line with communication, connection, intellect, we also saw the invention of a hot air balloon and electricity during this time. So Uranus is coming into Gemini. It is moving quickly. It is shaking things up, but ultimately the goal is more freedom, more connection, more communication, and a rise in intellect. And I know, again, you're probably thinking I've had enough upheaval already, but I like to focus on the positives of what this time might bring to us in terms of more freedom for the masses. I like to maintain a hopeful view that the changes that Uranus and Gemini brings will ultimately lead to a more unified worldview where we begin to understand that we're all interconnected on this beautiful planet. I guess we will see how it unfolds. Again, I'm not Nostradamus. I'm not trying to make a prediction here, but that's what I'm hoping for. Even if it means that at some point things are rocky, as is the way of any type of change. Now let's talk about this on an individual level, because all we can really control at the end of the day is our own choices and our own reaction to things. And as I mentioned, Uranus is the planet of our nervous systems, how we interact and relate to the world. And to understand more about this for yourself, it's worth looking up where Uranus sits in your natal chart. Mine, for example, is in Capricorn. So Capricorns are, of course, known for the relentlessness, the ambition, the drive, but it is an earth sign. It is slow, steady, stable, and meticulous. And I know for me personally, my nervous system does best when I am in motion, moving forward, when I am, building something or feeling like I'm going towards a goal. And when things feel stagnant or confused, I feel really dysregulated. With Uranus and the earth sign of Taurus, which is a more stubborn and slow moving sign, I felt more at ease, but also a little stir crazy at times. But now as it goes into Gemini, it will likely be a major shock to my system. I might feel like things are finally moving, thank you, but oh gosh, it's too fast and too up in the air. For me, I will need to make a very concentrated effort to regulate and ground myself to help with this transition. If your Uranus is in an earth or water sign, you're likely to feel a bit destabilized. However, if your Uranus is an air or a fire sign, you might actually find this time to be kind of fun, maybe? You might feel a major unblock or unsticking of things that you couldn't quite put words to. Sure, you might feel thrown off at times, but you'll likely find yourself enjoying the action and the quicker change of pace. Now, regardless of where Uranus sits for you, this will be a great time to dig into somatic practices that will help support you and your nervous system. And to help with that, I'm going to do a tarot pull to help us understand collectively what prompts we can use to help us reflect and reground if our nervous system feels unstable at any time during Uranus being in Gemini. I'm calling this the Dancing with the Winds of Change spread. I'll pull this on a collective level, but you can also pull this for yourself to have a more individually guided reading. So the first card is going to be the current storm, or what energy or situation is causing the greatest sense of dysregulation right now. The second card is going to be the anchor. What can I do to feel more rooted and stable amidst these shifting winds? And the third card is going to be the winds of change. What outdated thought pattern or mode of communication is Uranus asking me to release? The fourth card will be the message from the ether. What new idea, innovation, or connection wants to emerge if I embrace this change? And finally, the fifth card will be my embodied expression. How can I embody adaptability and authenticity as I move forward? And so with that, I'll pull the cards. Okay, for card one, the current storm, we have the Five of Cups. So again, this is what energy or situation is causing the greatest sense of dysregulation. Basically, the Five of Cups is all about being disappointed about reality. You had these high hopes about what things were going to be, and now you're sort of faced with what they actually are. And so that just means that the current storm is a lot of just your expectations being unmet. And I know there's that thing that, says all disappointment is basically just a root of unmet expectation, but I don't think there's anything wrong with having expectations. I think it's an important part of life. But that's going to be a lot of what you're going to be coming up against during the cycle is like, I thought things would look like this, and they do not. Now, then we have card two, which is the anchor, kind of how can I feel rooted and stable during these shifting winds? And it's really funny because this card is the Tower, which is probably the least anchoring card ever. And everyone is so afraid to get the Tower card. But the thing about it is, if you look closely, you've got this square tower, and on top of it was sitting a round crown, a crown that did not fit on the tower. And so finally we've got this lightning bolt coming to say, wait a second, this doesn't fit. This isn't right. You've built this thing so tall and topped it with something that isn't even right. And so I think what this card is telling us as the anchor is like, when you feel rooted and when you feel unstable, just recognize that whatever is being shaken up here, whatever feels like it's being completely torn down, is being done because it didn't fit. It wasn't right. It's time to correct the balance. Now, for card three, the winds of change, what outdated thought pattern or mode of communication is Uranus moving into Gemini asking us to release? Well, it's the card of judgment. This card is all about awakening, inner change, coming into oneself. Basically, everything has been judged, and now is a time to rejoice. So, this card is asking us to not believe that everything that's about to come during this time period is just to punish us. It's ultimately all to release us, to bring more joy, to bring more freedom, to bring more awakening. And in terms of card four, the message from the ether, what wants to sort of reemerge, come alive in this change is the Knight of Cups, which is all about connecting to our deeper creativity, our deeper emotion, our romanticism, and our inspiration. So this card is really encouraging us when these times feel crazy, when they feel out of control, when they feel destabilizing, Remember to romanticize your life, the little things. A funny thing I like to do sometimes when I'm cooking for myself is to pretend that I'm making a love potion for myself with each ingredient that I'm putting in. How can you romanticize the parts of your life that maybe feel monotonous or dull to help you enjoy the stability of it as you're going through this major change? For our final card, my embodied expression, how can I embody adaptability and authenticity as I move forward? It's so funny because this is literally the Page of Swords, which kind of represents like intellectual curiosity, a need for communication, and clarity. So this is saying, as you feel maybe thrown off by everything that's going on, or you need help to regulate your nervous system, go back to curiosity. Go back to finding clarity. Go back to communicating. This is going to be a big time where things feel in the air because literally Uranus upheaval is in the air with Gemini. So the more curious you can be about, where do I feel this in my body? Does it have a color? Does it have a memory? Does it have a sensation? And allowing that to help you bring clarity to your asks of people around you, for your own self, for your own boundaries, the more that's really going to help stabilize you during this time. There is so much to this transition of Uranus and Gemini. And as you've heard over and over again, 2025 is definitely a banner year for astrology. So this change is not happening alone in a vacuum, and hopefully soon I can put out a video about Pluto and Aquarius, which is also a major change that we're undergoing. But regardless, I hope that this video has really helped you to have the tools, have the wisdom to navigate this time. And with the spread we just went over, really helping you to feel empowered about how to increase your ability to regulate during this time, and to remember that this time is ultimately meant to bring more freedom to the masses, more communication, more connection. So please leave me a comment about how this is landing to you, or thank you to those of you who have been sending me emails. Please feel free to do that. If you don't want to leave a public comment, my email is hello@pocketmystic.com, and I look forward to hearing from you.